Welcome to Batchademia,
a podcast so educational it could be a university class.
With your hosts,
Danielle Dick McHugh,
Kim Hannah,
and Bill Henninger. Welcome everybody to Batchademia. We are back, and this week it is D3 and Bill, and we are going to talk about how Clayton continues to really just, I don't know, what's the word for it, Danielle? What is Clayton doing?
So, okay, I have empathy for Clayton.
Oh.
Did you read? So some things came out from Peter Weber, I guess, on two different fronts. So Pilot Pete, apparently some of the headlines were like, Peter thinks that Clayton ends up alone. And people are like, Peter, like, you probably shouldn't talk on this. But then other headlines were talking about how in this interview, Peter was saying how much he empathized with Clayton because he feels like the show is revealing, like making Clayton look stupid. And, you know, Peter was like, this is a lot more complicated than you think. And I think
Peter's like, I didn't like it when they made me look stupid.
Yes, exactly. and here's what's hard. I felt like Peter was kind of just like a Playboy tool. I feel like even though they're trying to frame Clayton with the I was intimate with both of you sort of thing, I think that Clayton comes across as a really good guy who's just not cut out for them.
I think both Clayton and Peter, Peter has empathy for him because he also thought with his little head. And he's like, I know how bad you can look when you don't take a second to really think through a decision. And you're just like, I want to make out with that girl. I want to sleep with that girl.
I don't feel like Clayton is quite as douchey though.
No, I think he probably has more regret after he does it. I think that's the difference, is the regret after. But I have friends that are like both of those guys, and they're like, no, I've got this crazy girl living with me. And it's like, well, yeah, but you did that to yourself, right? Like, you were the one who slept with her. You were the one who let her move in. Like, at what point do you take responsibility for your actions?
But I mean, Clayton is just, I do feel bad for, because he comes across as incredibly dull.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel some empathy for him. I just don't think, I feel some empathy for him. And I think it's only about to get harder.
Yeah, and I'm here for it.
Absolutely.
Speaking of hard choices, we got the question of the day.
Question of the day.
Question of the day. Question of the day. All right, here we go. A handsome prince or beautiful princess, or a beautiful prince and a handsome princess, I don't care which way you go, sweeps you off your feet and offers to take you to buy one thing, no price constraints, but it is something you can only use for that day and you want to impress them. What are you buying?
Okay, so I was thinking about this and I was like, Danielle, you need to have like some really clever like answer, you know, like
but you're also middle-aged and have kids, so there's probably a practical side of you as
well.
yeah,
it's a good thing we just bought a couch, or that would be my answer. Yeah. But like the one day thing though, you know, I was like, well, do I need to like think of like some sort of like magic beanstalk, you know, kind of an answer that like it would grow for that one day, but then like it would leave some of its seeds, so even though I would like trick the question by having seeds that would grow later. But then I realized the truth is I really just, if it's only one day, I want food. I want really good food. And I don't know if like me ordering and eating ridiculous amount of food is impressive, but I'm willing to risk it.
So we're on the same page, probably why we're such good friends. I was like, I would probably hire like a world-renowned chef and bring him in and be like, you know, we're going to have this awesome date where, you know, they take down our preferences and they make us all of these like really like fun things that we've never had. Yeah. That would be my thing. And I would hope that a person I would want to date would be really impressed by the forethought in that.
But you didn't think about the beanstalk idea.
Oh no, I'm selfish. I wasn't like, and then I want to make the world a better place. I was like, nah, this is just for me and this girl I'm trying to impress.
Well, to be clear, I don't know that it was my altruism that evoked that answer. It's more like I'm reading fairy tales right now.
Oh, so you were trying to outthink it.
I was trying
like
to
wishing for more wishes.
Yeah. Like, yeah. So, but thank you for thinking that I was trying to make the world a better place.
Oh, all right.
Doesn't make the world a better place?
Who?
Shanae.
Shanae doesn't. Oh no, where'd my recap go? Oh, give me a second, people.
Bill and I are kind of squirrely today, I think.
We are.
I think that's why it's on. Work has just been right in our asses lately. And so now we have like a moment where we can like.
I like that you use the term right in our ass. I'm not going to make my nuts Catalina wine mixer. You know how mad I get? All right. Are you ready for the recap?
This is a really serious an educational podcast, folks.
Bring
on the recap.
Elaine right now is talking to the governor of our state about aging in Iowa and what resources we need, and Danielle and I are talking about the Bachelor. All right, here we go. You ready?
Here we go.
All right, so we start out. And wait, no, this is the one I want. Sorry, folks. Redo.
I'll just keep talking to them.
Yeah, please.
So I was telling Bill before we jumped on that I thought that I made kind of a funny joke today.
Oh, yeah.
So a person that I went to high school with, a couple of years behind me, I think, she posted all these hilarious pictures that her kids had drawn of rocket ships, and they're just straight up penises, like really good penis drawings. And I wrote, "Take me to the moon." And I amused myself with that answer. So if you are friends with me on Facebook and also with Krista, then you should like my comment so I can have a dopamine hit.
I like it.
Or you could subscribe to our podcast.
All right, here we go.
All right.
This week's episode of The Bachelor, we picked up with Sarah Harmick coming back to the hotel in Croatia, and she's had an issue with Mara. And so, and this was after a one-on-one date, and basically Clayton said that somebody told him that she was fake, blah, 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 blah. Sarah comes in, she confronts the whole group of people. And Mara is basically like, this is what I had to do. Suck it up. I don't care what you think. And then Sarah does an old mic drop and is like, oh, and what Clayton said was he thought this was a desperate move. Boom, and walks out. We have no evidence to that. So it might have just been like real good mental warfare. So then Susie got the first one-on-one date of the night. She and Clayton rode around Vienna in a vintage car, and they did what we are calling the pretty woman. Yeah, the pretty woman thing where they get to shop for stuff. They shop for a bunch of stuff. General consensus in the COVID watching pod was that it was really awesome, and the dresses by the really famous lady. Do you know her name? The designer. They looked really good, and Susie looked really good. And then they ate, and then he sang Lady in Red. And then Susie got the rose. End of date. They have beautiful smiles, and their children have beautiful smiles. So, oh wait, I did miss a rose ceremony, right?
Before they go to Vienna, is there a rose ceremony?
I don't have it in there.
That's okay. So
thank you. You're so nice. Like, that's okay, Bill.
That's all right.
So there was a rose ceremony. The main thing was that Mara got sent home, and then one other person. But they were kind of the person that we were like, yeah, they're going home.
Yeah.
So then
that's not when Teddy gets sent home. That's later, right?
Right. Yeah. So
sorry, I jumped the gun on that, but go ahead.
Oh, here we go. The women started, the evening started with 9 women and ended with 4. Here's who got sent home. Eliza gets sent home, and Mara.
Okay, yep.
And then they go on the group date. If you didn't know, the Vienna is the home of one Sigmund Freud, who is considered the founder of modern psychotherapy. Though many of his methods have been debunked, and I'll just leave it at that. But they were like, HIPAA be damned, we're going to make these women sit down and we're going to make them cry and tell us stuff about themselves, and it's going to be really uncomfortable. And also we're going to have Clayton, who is not the most emotionally supportive person. He just keeps saying, wow, thanks for talking. Thanks for sharing that. So we sit down with a lady who, a psychotherapist who Kim thought might be an actor, and so did Danielle, but she looked like a pretty badass one. She had tattoos.
She was beautiful, but to be clear, she also clearly had injections. Like, she had fillers, and she had Botox. Like, she looked great.
Which is fine.
I would have Botox too if I could afford it. But I mean, she did look more like an actress.
You got to question it, right?
Yeah.
Or they found like the one psychoanalyst in Vienna that also looks like a model.
That is also smoking.
Yeah. So the women meet with them, and basically they all sit down, they kind of cry, and Genevieve comes up, and the psychoanalyst is like, tell me about yourself. And she's just like, I don't have anything to say. I don't have anything interesting to say. And then the psychoanalyst is like, well, you should share with Clayton. And then apparently this is where Clayton draws the straw, because he has not eliminated anybody up to this point unless it's a rose ceremony. And he's like, all right, well, if you can't share all of your darkest mental health secrets, I'm gonna kick your ass out. And he sends Genevieve home. So then after they're done, the therapist tells Clayton that some of the women are being performative. During the evening part of the date, several women said they thought about leaving because Sarah implied that she and Clayton were a done deal. Sarah also said that she loved therapy and she was going to use it to her advantage. One of the women told Clayton that Sarah said that she cried when Clayton and her were in a former date. And apparently that is where Clayton really took issue. He's like, she said I cried. So then he sends Sarah home. He said, I'm sorry, but I just don't believe you. I think we're done. I just can't move forward. Clayton didn't give out a rose at the end of the group night, saying that he just didn't feel like he could after everything happened. Serene got Clayton's second one-on-one date. The two went on a carriage ride in Vienna. During the evening portion of the date, Serene and Clayton bonded over having been in long-term relationships that didn't work out. Serene told Clayton she was falling in love with him. He gave her a rose and said he was excited to meet her family. Then we go down to the rose to decide who the last person is going to be for hometowns. And it is between Gabby, Rachel, right?
Yep.
Gabby, Rachel, and Teddy. Yes. And so Teddy doesn't get the rose. So he keeps Gabby and he keeps Rachel. And he also is going to go home with Sarah, right? No, not Sarah. Susie. And the other person I said, Serene.
Were you surprised that Teddy went home?
We were having like long, in-depth debates while this was all going down, and the room was very split. I thought Teddy was going to go home. I thought he just didn't seem that interested anymore in her, and I felt like he was really interested in Gabby and Rachel. I knew for sure he was keeping Rachel.
So what's interesting to me is the moment that I saw it was Gabby, Rachel, and Teddy, I thought Teddy was going home, because I just think Gabby and Rachel he has really strong connections with. But I was shocked in some ways that it seems like all of a sudden he's developed this strong relationship with Serene.
Yeah, that was the one I didn't see coming, but you kind of knew that she was already in, so she wasn't part of the conversation. But I think it goes back to him just like giving roses away during one-on-ones because he doesn't want to deal with like the uncomfortable.
That was one of the things that I thought. I was like, well, if he had taken somebody else on that one-on-one, and it was between like Teddy and Serene, who would he
Right.
have chosen? Because I mean, they seem to have, him and Serene seem to have a good connection. It's just that it seems like we haven't hardly heard anything about her. So, and then like, because Teddy and his last date was when Teddy said that, she's a virgin. So it was like, I'm gonna walk her and her virginity right out of here.
And he couldn't tell at the time that she was a virgin. Like, apparently she wasn't giving off the virgin pheromone that he can smell, or the shirt with the V. That was one of the dumbest comments I think that's ever been said on The Bachelor. And that's an impressive, like, to have the dumbest comment ever on The Bachelor, you're really working. So
it's important to aspire to big things, Bill.
I know, right? All right. So I got some concepts we want to discuss.
Okay.
Here we go. What do we think about giving gifts in like the Pretty Woman dates? Because we talked about this in the thing before, and in our COVID watching group. It's like they're giving them away, but it's not really like, I don't think they get to keep them.
I think that I don't know if she gets to keep the big red dress, but I bet some of the shopping stuff.
Okay.
She probably does. I don't know. I've always thought these dates are weird. Like shopping's kind of exhausting, I think. And
well,
so like the idea that you, in a dressing room, I don't know.
So Christy was like, I would love this type of date, our friend Christy, but then Kim, Elaine, me, Jorge, I think you, it sounds like, would be like, man, this just seems like so much work. You know what date I would want? Let's sit on Amazon and put stuff in a cart, and then let's think about it for a couple days and just really mull it over. Let's take it out of the cart. Let's put it back in. Let's pro and con it. Let's see if there's a cheaper one, and then pull the trigger and regret it when it comes.
I mean, I think there's a few things. Like, one, I don't think that, okay, so gift giving is probably not my love language.
Right.
Right. If we kind of go to
love
that
language.
In fact, like gift giving kind of causes me anxiety. Like if I find something that reminds me of people, I like love to get people stuff, but especially like like when you're like, somebody's birthday, and I'm like, I gotta figure something out. It makes me anxious.
Really?
So one, I also feel like the imbalance of like this, like he's showering her with these huge gifts that I'm not sure he's really showering her with.
Right.
It's just bizarre. I just don't know. Like, I just don't know that I want to spend all my time like in a dressing room. I just don't know that it would like, some of the girls were like, oh, I just like love to be able to wear that dress in front of Clayton. I don't know. Like, that's where like maybe, I don't know. I kind of understand that, but I don't.
Really?
Huh. Right. Like, I don't understand, like, oh, like, I would just want somebody to look at me in this. Like, that's just, like, weird to me.
I think that it's interesting. There's never been, I went back and I looked, and I could never find, like, a male corollary to it. Like, what is because this is definitely, like, Bachelor, and it's like the Pretty Woman date, right? Like, you're showering them with these gifts. Like, is there a male version of it? I know they've done some like race car driving, like assuming all men want to like drive a car and drive fast.
But I do think there is this idea that we've sort of like gender stereotyped like shopping as like a female leisure activity, right?
And I think there's plenty of men out there that do.
And that if you assume, I mean, yes, I think that shopping is a form of like entertainment in a capitalist society, right? But like I also think that like the idea that it sort of like plays on this idea that like men want to spoil or provide, I guess.
But I don't know any guys that really, like, if they're being totally honest with their wife or their girlfriend, really enjoys following them around the mall and like holding their bags for them. Like, it's just, and it's just, it's not a good date, really.
No.
Like, it would be a good birthday gift if that was what your spouse was into. Like, I'm going to do this for you this one time. But like, if you're looking for everyday dates, there's just a lot of problematic, like, one, it's just spending money for the sake of spending money. Two, I don't think the guy gets a ton of enjoyment out of it.
But he got to look at her in that dress.
Yeah, right. What a gift.
It's so weird.
It is.
Yeah. I do want to note.
Yeah.
This is not my wild card, but I considered it because the lady in the red performance was like the actual singer.
The guy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That was DeBerg.
Yeah.
We looked it up and we were like, oh shoot, that's really him. That's a real person that, yeah.
That is like a rare and kind of like this is a shocker. Like, this might be the most shocking thing that has happened this season is that it wasn't someone playing a cover.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah.
Yeah. And then Kim got on her phone and gave us a like whole history of him. And like, apparently he'd been married to his wife for a very long time, but he cheated on her. He's from Ireland. Whole thing.
Oh man. Okay, so my dog is losing his mind. So I have to, so you start talking about concept 2.
Okay, I got it.
Back.
I got this. Nice cardigan. All right, so we are going to talk for the next concept about the therapy. So I was very uncomfortable with this for a myriad of reasons, but I think that sitting down and bearing your soul to the camera in front of a therapist that I'm not sure is a therapist is really on point. And my thought was, I feel like the Bachelor franchise is trying to really lean into this idea of mental health and like positive mental health and preventative mental health, but they just seem to like not know how to do it correctly. And so they're going to sit down with somebody in an area of mental health help that is not totally evidence-based. There's been a lot of Freud's ideas that have been debunked, and like with someone you've just met and like you're supposed to cry and bare your soul. I don't know. What do you think?
So on one hand, I'm just like, this is not very creative. Mm-hmm. Didn't we just have like a group therapy session like 2 weeks ago?
I feel like this has been a reoccurring one the last few seasons where they bring in somebody who is not well equipped to do group therapy.
Well, this isn't even the first one this season.
Oh, yeah.
So like part of me is just like, wow, you're recycling ideas already, like within the same season. So like that's weird. The whole concept is weird. And I think maybe you're right that they are trying to sort of like normalize therapy, right? And at least this time they pulled them aside so it was like one-on-one, because I also feel really weird when it's like now you're going to disclose things not only to like Clayton but also to the whole group.
Well, and you talked about kind of the performative aspect of it where it becomes like a disclosure of
or sort of like
when you're in a group you feel obligated
or like trauma trumping that like, oh well, I don't want to share my thing because like I can't outdo the last person's like trauma.
Right.
It's really bizarre. It's like a weird competition to have. I don't know.
So one of my thoughts on it was like, what was the point of this, right? If it's to get to know each other, then they could have done that. So like Christy and Jorge have a book of questions that they sit down every Sunday and they ask each other. And though it's not my thing, I think it's a really good way to get to know each other and to talk through stuff. And it makes really rich, like, outstanding conversations. Or you could go do something where you're side by side. Like they could have found a million other ways. If this was done to actually be a active mental health intervention, there is no way they are going to get anywhere in the 45 minutes that they sat down with that person, right? Like, that's not how counseling works. Counseling is like 10 sessions where you go through this whole span of emotions. You work on, most of your work in counseling is done outside of the session. So it's not like you go into a counselor and they fix you in an hour. It's like they give you stuff to do and then you do it all week, and then you come back and you process. And so it's like, it was just meaningless, and it doesn't help the mental health narrative by doing it. It just makes it even more confusing and useless to people. So,
well, I think that the other thing is, so at least when they did the group session, if I remember right, this last time it really centered around body image issues, and Clayton shared some of his own. I also thought that part of what was weird about this week's episode was that it seemed like the women were disclosing, and if Clayton was sort of reciprocating that, we at least didn't get to see it.
Right.
So it felt, again, sort of like lopsided. I'm never a huge fan of compulsory disclosure, like where you require people to disclose.
Which is essentially what happened to poor Genevieve. Like,
no, so I have such mixed feelings about this, because on one hand, I think you're right. You're like, oh my gosh, he finally decides to like have a backbone, and it's like to send home someone that won't share, right? Like, but on the other hand, I kind of have not felt like him and Genevieve really have a connection.
Oh no, yeah, she needed to go. I just feel like sending her home essentially because she wouldn't bare her soul in the first 20 minutes of a therapy session is a really bad look, right?
I also think, like, don't you feel like sometimes though, like I'm like, I didn't get like closure on this as like a viewer, that it's like Genevieve's just like, yeah, no, I'm not talking, like, and then she just goes home, and like she's just gone, and I'm sort of like, I need like the little confessional moment in the car where she like explain, like it tells me something. Yeah. So like then I'm like, Genevieve, I need you to disclose to me for me to have closure on this show.
It's horrible that they made her disclose, but you need to disclose to me.
Yes.
Yeah. In conclusion, bad look. I maybe of all the things this season, this was the thing that I was most appalled about. I was not a fan. I thought it was poorly done. I thought it made no. Why are you laughing? Quit laughing at me.
Because I could tell that Bill was,
Bill's riled up. Riled up. The one thing that sets me off.
Professional toes here.
All right. Last concept. You ready?
Bring it on.
Let's talk about masculinity and crying. First off, I have a question for you. Are women totally turned off when men cry? Because I feel like that is what like Clayton is worried about, when that girl was like, Sarah said you cried, and he was like, I didn't cry. She said that I cried.
So no, though I don't speak for all women.
No, you do right now.
I do right now.
Danielle, all women, Dick McGew.
I mean, I do think that it probably depends on the situation, but I think that most people would appreciate that sort of like emotional vulnerability in a partner, and to feel like that would be a sign that you feel safe enough with someone.
Right.
I couldn't tell when he was okay. So I wanted to feel sorry for Sarah, but I felt like he was spot on though about her faking things.
Oh yeah.
Here she's just like sobbed this whole time, and then he like ends up sending her home, and like she doesn't even like cry in the van by herself, and I was like, but I couldn't tell because I read that moment a little bit different. I didn't read it as him being like, I didn't cry. I read it as him going, oh, here's like a moment that I was there, and I for sure know that didn't happen. So like now I realize like she has been lying. And I thought that that was like this interesting moment because like I think it was the sometimes like good guy, good girl, bad girl. I don't know. Like with Mara and Sarah, and I thought it was kind of interesting because Mara's kind of awful, but she was also turned out she was kind of right about Sarah. And I thought it was like an interesting moment where it's like, okay, they're just both not really that great.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like it's not like two negatives where they become a positive, right? I think that's how it works.
Yeah. That's how it works.
Yeah. No, they're like additive, not multiplicative.
Yeah. I will say this. I think that I do think that there are a lot of norms around masculinity that are shifting in culture. I think that there is a lot more space for men to express emotions that are not anger. I think that there's a lot more and a lot of like family research, we're seeing fathers take on much more engaged roles with their kids, and expressing emotions with kids is really common and acceptable too. So I would just say that masculinity, I think, has space for expressing emotions like sadness or disappointment or frustration.
Yeah, I went and I looked up some research, and the vast majority of partners, and so some of this was done on same-sex couples, like so same-sex men couples, like the vast majority of partners said, I would like it if my partner cried, or maybe not like it. I would like the emotional expression of them crying. Like, I do not enjoy that they don't cry. That's not something when I say, what do I like about my partner? It's like they're stoic, they never cry. But then I did look, and there were some limits on crying. So what we find is that what you don't want is somebody who cries at everything or cries at what you would deem irrational things. And so there's some play in there, like, well, what you deem irrational, is it irrational to your partner? Things like that. But I think it's interesting that there's this. Go ahead.
You shouldn't have to cry too in order to communicate that you care about something.
Yes.
And I think that, so Sarah's crying came across fake, right? And here's the thing, I don't think she was like necessarily like, I don't know, but I don't think that she's like Shanae, who's like, I'm going to turn on the tears, right? But I do think that she felt that crying was the way that she was going to show Clayton that she cared and she was upset. And I think that that's something that maybe we miss too, is that while women are allowed to express emotion through crying, we're sometimes also taught that the way that you communicate that you care is by turning on the tears, or like that's how you're going to get noticed, or somebody's not going to pay attention to you until you cry. And that's messed up too.
Yeah, I think it's almost like the flip side of it, right? Men shouldn't cry. Women need to cry when they want to be paid attention to. I think either one is not right. And maybe, and I didn't find this in the research, but now that I'm thinking about it, maybe really what people are saying is, I like it when my partner is authentic in their emotions. So if they need to cry, if they are sad, I want them to cry. If they're not sad, I don't want them to fake cry, right? I value authenticity and emotion in my partner. And I think that's what I just thought was very interesting about this, because maybe Clayton didn't cry and maybe it was a total lie. But maybe he did. And like just his response to it was so like, I didn't do that. And it's just like, I
want to go back and watch that section again.
If somebody said I cried and I didn't, I think I would just be like, oh, I don't know why they said that. I didn't.
Wouldn't get so defensive.
But yeah. So, but then again, when you see him in that one scene they keep showing where he's like, I'm so broken, it's like he doesn't even really look like he's crying there. So
yeah, I don't know.
I wanted to be like, you might not
wait for that conversation he has with his parents.
Yeah, where his dad's basically like, you screwed up, suck it up, buddy. Tough love.
Oh.
Which, going back to what you said about, dads and how they teach their kids emotion and things like that, you can see where he might have got the, like, men are tough love, men are blunt, men are stoic. Just very small snippet, but I think a lot of research is we learn our emotional kind of how we do stuff from our parents. And so if you had a parent who didn't, showed you that this is what mom does or this is what dad does, you're likely to recreate that.
Yeah.
Unless you have models further on. So cool. All right. I'm excited for this part. We got a wild card. Dun, 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 dun.
Yay. So I'm excited.
That was not Tone Loc's song, by the way. I was not doing that. We do not need to pay royalties. That was my own song called Wild Card that I made up.
A wild card that I made up. So this is a segment that I'm calling two different things. But first we're gonna call it Danielle Does Freud Poorly.
Love it.
So first off, to kind of harken back to some things that Bill said earlier, Freud's Psychoanalytic Society was like housed in Vienna. What kind of cracks me up about this is that, like, so the producers are like, well, that's what we know about Vienna is Freud. Like, clearly what we need to do is a psychoanalytic date here. And I'm just sort of like, on one hand, I'm kind of like, kudos to you all, but I'm also like, do you think most viewers are making this connection and this is what they want? Like, Vienna, what do you think of? Freud and psychoanalysis.
Here are the two things I thought of because I'm adult. Sausages, Vienna sausages, and the canals. And then I was like, shit, that's Venice. So you can tell where my brain is.
Yeah, I mean, I just like thought that it was like kind of funny because it's sort of like it should have just been like obvious to us.
Yeah.
Like, of course they brought in this
Freud
moke show of a therapist because this is, home of Sigmund Freud, like we all know. So anyway, I have not taken a psychology class for like 20 years, and I do not do psychoanalysis. So what can Danielle remember? So this is a game that we're playing called What Can Danielle Remember? So this is not one of those segments where we lay on the knowledge.
You are not this is not drawing on PhD work.
No, do not cite anything that is about to come out of my mouth.
Imagine Danielle.
You're writing.
Imagine Danielle 20 years ago. She's sitting in, because you went to UNI, right?
Yeah, I sat in the Sabin, the big lecture
the
hall. The
old Sabin lecture hall. It was dark. It was dank. She was maybe eyeing young Ryan at the time if he was in the class.
Absolutely not. I did love this class. I ended up taking a few more psychology classes, like behavior modification, and I think like a cognitive behavioral therapy. Is that like a thing?
Yeah, CBT.
Yeah, so I did something like, I did a class on that too, which I clearly remember really well. So there's three things that I remember about Freud: penis envy, dreams, and hysteria. Okay, that's all I got. So penis envy, you all, let's talk. Okay, first off, I feel like psych profs like to start with penis envy. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this is a terrible way to do things, because once you talk about penis envy, I ain't thinking about anything else, which actually might kind of confirm Freud's theories. So I know Bill's all like, it's been debunked, but I'm just saying, right now.
Man, I'm gonna have to check the explicit material when I upload this after you said penis for the 7th time.
It's just a body part. So this is what I remember about P3nis Envy. So first there was some talk about the Oedipus complex. Is that how you say it?
Oedipus,
Oedipus, Oedipus, tomato. So this has always been like one I'm not fully buying. It's this idea that when you're like a kid, you subconsciously have the hots for your parents. That's the opposite sex. P3nis envy is a thing that little girls experience when they realize that they have different body parts than boys, and that boys have penises, which we immediately are jealous of. I've always been, I mean, it doesn't take a lot of critical thinking to be like, like, why not vagina envy? Right, you are gonna have to hit the explicit thing here. I mean, like, I just like kind of am like, well, why wouldn't it work the opposite way? And I don't know. I also never fully understood, and I probably could have researched this more, but I wanted this to be a fun game of what Danielle can remember. I've never quite understood like why that was important, other than like, near as I can tell, there's subconscious things that happen when you're younger and it can screw you up later in life. Is that fair, Bill?
Yeah.
Like, kind of know these things, right?
Yeah, no, you're getting the gist of it.
And like our teacher was always like, this might sound weird now or like whatever now, but like this was really foundational to the field of psychology. But I'm always like, okay, like how? Why? Like why? And is it just this idea that we have formational experiences that we may or may not be aware of that affect us later?
Yeah, I think it was that there's things going on in your mind that you cannot be totally aware of until you talk it through with somebody. And so then if you do like cognitive behavioral therapy, that is kind of the basis of it, right? You talk to someone, they have kind of the forest for the tree idea, and they can say, what I'm hearing you say is this, here's how maybe we change that. Yeah, that's what's foundational, but they don't teach that a lot of times. It's like, let's talk about Freud.
Now, to be clear, my teacher might have explained this and I don't remember anything.
But you were just drawing penises on your notebook because you said
absolutely.
Yeah, uh-huh. Who was the professor?
What?
Who was the professor?
I can't remember. He looked like a professor though. Like, I mean, like a stereotypical, like what you think of. He was an older white man with white hair.
Tweed jacket.
Totally, like that's how I remember him. I don't know if he actually wore tweed jackets, but that's how I remember him.
Did he have a beard?
Really liked him. Yes, white.
Oh yeah.
And so
was it Andy Gilpin?
Yes.
Yes, I love Andy.
I loved it. Is he still
he retired like 2 years ago. Shout out to Andy. I loved Andy.
Yeah. Some of, I remember some of my peers like thinking that, because he was a really standard lecturer. Now, in fairness to him though, both the classes I took with him were pretty large. Right. I don't know how creative of teaching styles you could have had. Right. And it was actually a really important class for me because back before it was I think is it FERPA violation now, if you would have, you could put your names, student ID and names and test scores. And, I've always done okay in school. And I've always loved learning, but I never thought of myself as like a smart kid most of the time because I'm easily distracted and kind of quirky. And it was in that class though, I started to realize he'd post scores and it was a very large lecture class. And I kept being like, oh, I got the second highest score in this class. And I was like, oh, maybe I'm doing okay. I thought everybody was just doing like I was doing. It was like, and like, it was, I really liked it. And then I took behavior modification with him too. Oh, and then I took an awesome class with Rowena Tan on social psychology.
Yep.
And it was,
shout out to Rowena, who still works at the university.
She's amazing. And so
see, everyone listening, come to you and I. We'll help you find who you are. Young Danielle found her footing, and you too could run a podcast about The Bachelor
and talk about P3nis Envy with not very much knowledge of it. But I mean, all of this is to say, this is what I remember. That doesn't mean that the teacher didn't teach me some of these things. The only thing that I was left with was this. I remember something about dreams. Dreams are important. That's like, again, the idea that the subconscious is doing stuff.
He had a whole book on the interpretation of dreams, where he like thinks one thing means something else. That's been debunked, but
it's fascinating though. And I'm like, and this is why I'm a theater like I do theater stuff. It's because I'm willing to suspend disbelief. So I'm like, all right, fine. Like, tell me that's what my dream's about. I don't care if it's debunked. I'm willing to imagine this could be possible. And then the last thing is hysteria. And so I know that Freud was really criticized for being sexist, right? And what's really interesting though is, if I remember right, one of his proteges was a woman, Helene. Do you remember her last name?
You're on the right track, but
like, so what's weird though is, while he's criticized for a lot of the ways, I mean, that it seems like women have a lot of the problems in some of his views, right? But at the same time, my understanding is that Freud was also pretty into, you should maybe believe a patient if they tell you this is what they're experiencing. And as weird as that sounds, like, if women were sort of thought to be sort of, the concept of hysteria is like that women were, losing it, they're nuts, so wacko, crazy, like whatever. That like, he was like, oh, but I think you should sort of believe what they have to say. So there's, I guess, like, it's complicated there.
His daughter, Helena.
His daughter.
Yeah.
So Helena is his daughter.
Yeah. If I remember right.
That.
Yeah. Okay. He
Okay.
also smoked like 4 cigars a day and died of jaw cancer. So,
and this was in like, he was practicing in like the early 1900s, right? So this is,
I think it was like the 1950s.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say like 1920. So I don't know. See, folks, this is
very educational.
Very, very educational. But anyway.
He died in 1939.
Okay, so maybe I am right.
Yeah, you are right. Take the victory, D3.
All right, but anyway, so if this roused your interests, you can start Googling things like P3nis Envy.
Yeah.
Maybe not on your work computer.
Or come to one of Iowa's fabulous universities. Maybe University of Northern Iowa, you could learn all about it.
Absolutely.
We're not affiliated with that university in any way.
Our opinions are not.
That one's for you, Joe Razor.
We're just full of shout outs today.
I know, yeah.
So what's some lessons that you learned this episode?
Well, that you also love Andy Gilpin. So I got to work with him early in my career. And
cool.
There are few people who are nicer and also have better attention to detail than him. He was a machine when it came to really mind-numbing details, like in documents. He was the best colleague to have because he would like read through something and pick everything out. And it actually probably hampered me a little bit because it made me lazy. And I'd be like, Andy's going to catch it. I'm too dumb to catch it. Just let him do it. I think the other thing that I learned is that Danielle and I have differing views on Clayton at this point. I've just given up on him, and you still, because you're a good-hearted person, are like, he's got redeeming qualities, and I'm just like, I'm just going to pour it on the guy at this point.
I think he has redeeming qualities. I just am still questioning their decision to make him the Bachelor.
Oh, yeah. I did laugh your text to me when you were like, is this whole thing a setup to let us know that he makes bad decisions? Because I knew that in the second episode.
Right. I don't know. It's been a weird season because I don't want to say that it's been boring because it hasn't. But like, I also just don't feel like I have, like, I'm not rooting for anyone. Like, I really like Gabby. I really like Rachel, but you're sort of like, I don't know that I want you to end up with him. Like, maybe you can do better.
Yeah. So Sue, Elaine's mom, thinks that, what's the girl with all the teeth? Susie is probably the next Bachelorette.
Well, people have kind of been joking about that because she looks so much like Hannah B.
Yes.
And then people like been showing pictures of like Hannah B and Colton, and they just look like twins. And even the red dress this week, there's shots of Hannah B in a different sort of red dress, but like very similar. And you're just like, so the obvious next step would be to make her the Bachelorette.
Yeah.
That's how this works, right?
Yeah, she seems a little less of a mess than Hannah B.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. And Hannah B, for all her flaws, or maybe because of some of her flaws, was a fantastically entertaining Bachelorette.
Yeah, she was good TV.
She was great TV.
Yeah.
I mean, I still technically follow her, but I'm not that interested in her anymore. But I was like interested in her for like a good year after she was in that role. So I guess like, I don't know. I learned a lot trying to remember things about psychoanalysis and Freud, which by the way, I still don't know. Like, I am very curious, like, what does like, if you go to a psychoanalytic therapist now, what does that therapy like look and feel like? I think it's like an interesting question that I have. I also am just like really kind of thinking about this Pretty Woman debate or Pretty Woman date and how many gender stereotypes are reconfirmed.
Oh, yeah. The dead look in his eyes as he carries her bags around. Like trying to find a TV to watch the playoff game that's on.
That's real life.
Yeah, hop in, folks. All right. So one of the things that Danielle and I talked about before the start of this season is we need a better sign off. And so I had this brilliant idea the other day. We have had over 800, close to 900 total cities. And and close to 40 different countries, almost 50 different countries of people who have listened to our podcast. So I'm going to end every episode by saying thanks to a random city who has listened to us.
Oh, that's great, Bill.
All right, you ready? I'm going to pick one at random.
All right.
I'm scrolling. Guadalupe, Nuevo Leon. Thank you for listening. We've had 5 listeners from there. So
wow, thanks for listening.
Thank you. If I knew what language they spoke there, I'd say thank you in that language, but
hit subscribe.
You too could be part of the good people of Guadalupe, rest of that word, because I can't. Nuevo Leon. So
I can't say Guadalupe.
All right. Have a good weekend. Danielle raised her fist. Bye-bye, everybody.
You have been listening to Bachademia
with your hosts, Danielle Dick McGee,
Kim Hanna,
and Bill Hennig.
All thoughts and opinions expressed on the show are solely those of the person who spoke them.
If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the show, leaving a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Also, please share with your family, friends, colleagues, and other ardent Bachelor fans.
If you have comments or questions you would like us to address on the show, you can email us at bachademia@gmail.com.
Or on the Twitter with the handle @bachademia.
Thanks for listening.